Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show and welcome to Wednesday. No walk on Wednesday today. Our walk on Wednesday canceled at the 11th hour. But we got a great theme today, Kaustubha. The theme of time.
Time, yeah.
I like that. You know, there's this feeling of that doesn't fit with the soul. The soul doesn't get time. It's really interesting when you study it from a Vedic perspective because we want this concept innately of eternality. Like when I hike behind my house, you find this stone wall. In the middle of the forest, there's like a beautiful stone wall. It appears like it was built yesterday, but it wasn't. It's, as ancient as this village I'm from. But why I'm a fan of stone walls, it's like the closest thing we have to like eternity. Especially if you're if you're in England or in Ireland and you see these stone walls and you go back hundreds of years, thousands, who knows, or you see castles in Europe or a Great Wall of China. There's something that the soul wants or appreciates about the very old, or we have this nostalgia of antique things. Or we find this person he's from America for many, many generations. He's lived here. Or sometimes even in Europe, we go to a medieval city, in Tuscany. And you feel like you're almost in another time. And there's something that the soul really relishes about something ancient. You know what I'm talking about in that regard?
Well, yeah, because time is so powerful. And we're helpless against it. So I guess if you see anything that's holding up relatively well, we try to hang on to that. Like these redwood trees or things like
Centenarians. People who live over
Okay.
100 were pretty impressed. And
But when you see a centurion, it's you can see the effects of time working away on them.
right.
pretty well,
So generally they're not lifting weights or but this idea of eternality. Oh, the confusion. And by the way, it's like Kala, the time factor, is an expansion of Maya or like an illusion. Anyway, so I'm always in this phase, and I think it's very common for people to feel like, well, I only realize my age when I say my age. Like, I'm going to be 55 in a couple weeks. And I'm like, I'm going to be 55. I remember when my dad was 55. He was old. And now it's me. And I have a feeling like I was a teenager a moment ago. I was friends with Paramananda when I was 16 years old. That was a moment ago. And so this idea of time, where did time go? It's a very common phenomenon, if not illusion almost. And the deciphering of it and the understanding of it, and how the time starts to shed almost like layers of matter is almost sort of fascinating. So I'm excited to sort of dig into this.
Because
the
time
soul
has a lot to say about time.
Yeah, and the soul desperately wants eternality. We want our love to last forever. We carve it in a tree. True love forever. You ever do that, Kaustubha?
Yeah.
Carve that in a tree.
I never
True
did
love forever.
carve that in a tree. But
True love forever. And what is forever? And so this is where we end up. We end up with what is eternality? What is spirit? What can I actually fall in love with that won't get taken away from me by the cruel hands of time? And here we are with sweet baby Krishna.
All right.
You want to dive in, sir? Okay.
Any announcements to make, Mara?
We have Bob Healy teaching asana at 6:30 this morning, and then Trevor Vaughn's Ashtanga class at 8 a.m. But also coming up this weekend, Madhu's going to do another workshop for a Bhakti Q&A workshop at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Oh, and Nancy's reminding me that there's a Bhakti Recovery Group meeting today at 1 o'clock.
So much going on.
Yeah.
So much going on. All right. This is great. Let's dive. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. In loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana-tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Translation for that, because we never do a translation for that, but and someone brought it to my attention.
Parmananda brought it up yesterday.
Parmananda brought it up. He said, what's the translation? Gyananjana Shalakaya. That is the scalpel, isn't it? The scalpel that removes the cataract.
Well,
so the guru,
Anjana, I think, means like the salve, right? So Gyan Anjana. And then is the Shalakaya referred to?
Well, there's different ways. I've heard different translations. The regular translation isn't actually a translation. So I like the idea of the teacher comes when I cannot see. And I offer my respect to this teacher who's come either with a scalpel to remove a cataract or with some salve or some ointment to put on my eye, something none of us have ever done. It's like an old school medicinal
eye
healing.
Drops. People would use
eye drops. Yes, the eye doctor comes to give us light. I guess you could look at it like that. And we rub it in our eyes, and now we can see. So I was born in darkness. I was born agyana, without any intelligence, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then the teacher comes into my life and gives me a new set of lenses of how to view the world. It's quite beautiful. I'll hash it out. We'll make a translation that we can.
Okay, going into the new year, we'll translate that one.
Yeah. So we're in the Bhagavatam. Where's my thing?
This is some dead air time.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. We're gonna finish this chapter. We're gonna finish this
Canto.
whole thing. Canto. What's our number, sir?
41.
41.
We read half of this yesterday, but we didn't get to
never
the second.
finished. According to the different gunas or the modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human being, and hellish entities. O king, even a particular mode of nature being mixed with the other two is divided into three. And thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other gunas and acquires its habits also. So we're sort of mutts, wouldn't you say?
Well, you mean like a blend of the different modes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely not all goodness.
Oh, come on.
I'm a passion and ignorance mutt. If I'm like a pound puppy. And so but we have a dominating one. We have a dominating guna that's affecting us, and even those can change. Some days you wake up, and even if you're bright and early and a morning person, you can wake up just sluggish and lazy, and I'm not going to do anything today. So, that's 14th chapter of the Gita. There's dominating gunas. We're born into one. You can change your gunas. But yeah, we are sort of like owned by them, and they're material things. They're not us. Continue reading.
Yeah.
According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different.
That's what you just read.
He, the personality of Godhead, as the maintainer of the universe, appears in different incarnations after establishing the creation, and thus he reclaims all kinds of conditioned souls amongst the humans, the non-humans, and the demigods. I like that.
So
We're
we've
being
heard
reclaimed.
we've heard about this chapter is described it started with the 10 subjects, the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the first two were Sarga and Visarga, which means the original creation of all the ingredients of the material world, and then the secondary creation, which is like all the different species. And so it's saying all those different species are blended to different modes, like we just read in the previous one. And then now this verse is saying, and then Krishna in different forms, or Lord Vishnu in different forms, enters into that creation with the aim of bringing people back, displaying his pastimes and capturing the attention, the affection of the living being, and ultimately, pulling them out.
There's a deep underlying faith that whatever we got is a blessing. People say that. People say that on Instagram, but there is an idea of this benevolent energy, this benevolent sort of vacuum cleaner, sort of sucking us out of the material world. Lessons are there for us to learn. Our hardships are there for us to grow. And there's like an energy trying to constantly ask us to upgrade our lives. And the Bhagavad, and when you tune into that, you'll see it come again and again and again and again. Krishna luring us out of the material world, and it becomes sort of addictive. In the same way you can become addicted to good habits or bad habits, Krishna becomes a little addicted, and next thing you know, it's like you are sort of like out of this world, and no one can relate to you anymore. That's sort of where we're at right now. Okay, 44.
43.
The great transcendentalist thus described the activities
43.
What's up with me? What's up with that? Thereafter, at the end of the millennium, the Lord himself, in the form of Rudra, or Shiva, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces clouds.
Yeah. So let's, it's appropriate as we come to the end of the year. Yeah, we're hearing about, like, this is describing the end of the universe.
Destruction? Yeah, let's talk about the destruction of the universe while we're here.
Yeah, but just like as the year ends and then a new one begins, so, the different manifestations, Bhagavatam is describing that they come to an end and then they start up again. And everything's on different time scales. So what, a year for some people, maybe this year felt like it passed quick. For some people, maybe it felt like it lasted a really long time. Maybe more people are on that side of the equation. But there's much shorter, much longer spans, and it's described that the universe is taking place over this very, very long, comparatively very long span. And so here's a little something from the commentary. Prabhupada writes, he says, the nature of the material world is that it is first created very nicely, then it develops very nicely, and stays for a great number of years, even beyond the calculation of the greatest mathematician. But after that, it is again destroyed during the night of Brahma without any resistance. And at the end of the night of Brahma, it is again manifested as a creation to follow the same principles of maintenance and destruction. So that is the nature of the material realm, because there's an ingredient in it, right? In this creation, in this manifestation called the material world, there's an ingredient called time. And time is pushing everything, right? Time is making it's because of time that there's creation, there's maintenance, and ultimately there's destruction.
You could use that to be like, well, why even garden then? If everything's going to be destroyed in my organic garden, why take care of this planet? It's all crumbling. It's all going to be destroyed in a day. How would you argue that?
Well, I mean, just because something's going to be destroyed doesn't mean that it's not going to play out for a certain amount of
Well, why
time.
clean my house if I know the whole thing's going to just be blown up?
Because well, I mean, if you wanted the full answer to that, because ultimately as you started, you were saying that the soul craves eternality. Why does the soul crave eternality? Because it's its nature. So it means that when the soul, which is made of spiritual energy, is situated in the material world, which is made obviously of material energy, and it has to deal with the element of time, it's uncomfortable, it's unnatural. It causes pain, it causes suffering.
Yeah.
So the idea is I want to try to free myself of that. That means I'm going to need to see things clearly. I'm going to need to be able to understand things with a clear, lucid mind, not be bewildered by it. And for that, the mode of goodness or sattva guna is conducive for that. If my mind is clear, I can interpret my life not through my attachments, which lead to illusion, but with a clear, lucid mind. And for that, to be situated in sattva guna, having a clean house is going to be helpful.
There's a good answer. Good answer.
Okay, is that working?
My point, yeah. The idea is that it's not just, okay, the world's going to collapse, so I give up. It's what I'm here. And even if things are, and things are pretty crazy now, and they're going to get crazier, that doesn't mean we can't be a transcendentalist in the midst of chaos as well. You could be a transcendentalist in the grossest polluted city and somehow have internal connection. In the same way you can be a materialist and live in the forest. There's plenty of materialists living up in the sticks. It's got nothing to do with the external environment or even what's going on. Matter of fact, sometimes when there's great crises, people really take shelter and get real deep. The whole Bhagavatam is a story of people getting real deep in the midst of great crises. So, yeah, that's how I'd sort of answer that too.
Okay, now this commentary goes on. And Prabhupada, again, I think when Prabhupada uses terms like that, he's saying them, I think, maybe not understanding how cutting some of the language is, but it's just almost more like matter of fact for him. But he says, the foolish conditioned soul, right, who has taken this temporary world as a permanent settlement, has to learn intelligently why such creation and destruction take place. Right? This is the point where we need to become a little thoughtful about life, rather than just say, "Hey, life, comes to an end. My relationships come to an end, my possessions come to an end, and that's just it." You start to think about why is this happening? So he says the fruit of actors in the material world are very enthusiastic in the creation of big enterprises, big houses, big empires, big industries, and so many big things out of the energy and ingredients supplied by the material agent of the Supreme Lord. Right? With such resources and at the cost of valuable energy, the conditioned soul creates, satisfies their whims, but unwillingly has to depart from all their creations and enter into another phase of life to create again and again, right? So no matter how much, we invest so much energy to try to create bigger and bigger things, but time comes and takes them away, and ultimately takes away our life, and then we have to enter into new body and try to create again. He says to give hope to such foolish conditioned souls who waste their energy in this temporary material world, the Lord gives information that there's another nature which is eternally existent without being occasionally created and destroyed, and that the conditioned soul can understand what he should do and how his valuable energy may be utilized. Instead of wasting his energy in matter, which is sure to be destroyed in due course by the supreme will, the conditioned soul should utilize his energy for the devotional service of the Lord so that he can be transferred to the other eternal nature, where there is no birth, no death, no creation, no destruction, but permanent life instead, full of knowledge and unlimited bliss. The temporary creation is thus exhibited and destroyed just to, this is great, right here, he sums it up here nice. The temporary creation is thus exhibited and destroyed just to give information to the conditioned soul who is attached to temporary things. It is also meant to give him a chance for self-realization and not for sense gratification, which is the prime aim of the fruitive actors. So right here, Prabhupada's saying that this element of time is actually meant for our education. We're meant to contemplate it, right? We're meant to gain some insight through it. Otherwise we're just running blindly.
Yeah. All right.
I thought you were gonna. I was. You look
ready.
Like
you ready for me to drop a bomb on you?
Yeah.
No, I'm just like looking at my own life. I'm like, yep, you're right. I like the concept of everything lives 100 years too, but 100 years in their own time. Like approximately, we're supposed to humans live 100 years. A fly lives 100 years, but 100 years in fly time. We even say that, like he's like
dog
65
years.
in dog years, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But he's only 8 or something like that. So there's this idea that we live a full life, but it's all relative to the species we're in.
We perceive it as full.
Right. And in the same way, there's dog years, there's demigod years, there's Brahma years. Brahma lives 100 years. And in that 100 years, there's a day and a night of 1 year. And so what is it? The day of Brahma is the end of the millennium, or the night of Brahma is the end of the millennium? How's it work?
I think, yes.
Not the
well,
millennium.
yeah, I mean, millennium is kind of like
millennium means 1,000. So it means
it can mean 1,000, or it can just mean a very long, undefined period, I believe, as well.
Mara, is millennium an actual number? I thought it was 1,000.
I'll tell you. Just one second.
She's so smart. She sits and meditates.
Yes, she just has to think about it for a second.
Has to think. She cultivates what she learned in that.
It does look like it's a period of 1,000 years.
Okay. But can't it refer to something beyond that as well?
Maybe we just use it like that because we're always talking about time and things.
According to Merriam-Webster, it's also a utopian period of good government, great happiness, and prosperity.
So I think it can be used in more general terms, but in any case, very long. But yeah, so Brahma has a day and a night, and he'll live 100 years like that.
So after he dies, that's the end of the universe. I can't remember.
No. Well,
or is it at night?
Then the universe. I believe the universe is the end of the universe at his death. But there's many universal creations and destructions within.
So there's like sub devastations.
Yeah,
and then
every
a massive
night.
Devastation
every night. So it's like 365 times 100 destructions, and then recreations.
Right.
And then the whole thing enters back into the body of Lord Vishnu for that whole period of time.
And it's happening right now. It's happening, it's happening on the micro right now, to bugs, to bacteria, to humans.
Yeah. And so what Srila Prabhupada is saying in this purport is like, Bhagavatam's helping us understand this and recognize it. And as we go, as we feel that pinch, which we're all going to feel, whether it's something as little as, looking in the mirror and seeing the gray hair or the wrinkles, or the loss of anything, big or small, what to speak of those major losses in life, that we all, life goes along, it moves along, and sometimes it feels okay. And then there's great loss, some deep loss that has emotion tied very strong to a loss of a loved one.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
But but again, it's being said here that one can recognize that is the element of time, right? That is the force of time. And that element is unnatural to me. That's why I feel the pinch.
That's the interesting point. It's actually unnatural.
Yeah.
It's unnaturally. That sorrow or that sadness or that why do I have to lose what I love?
Tell me why. Questions. What's the line? I'm forced to die, right? Although I want to live, right? As you're saying, we crave eternality, right?
Yeah.
And we crave that to have a stable situation where everything's not falling apart. Sometimes things are falling apart quick, right? Sometimes it's happening slow. But again, that it's that the temporary creation is exhibited and destroyed just to give information to the conditioned soul who is attached to temporary things. So we have to realize I'm miscalculating the whole thing here. This is the way the thinker, the sage thinks. I've attached myself to things that are temporary. So by definition, you know, consequentially, I've attached myself to pain because because the temporary things by nature are under the influence of time.
There has to be a shift at a certain point in our life where we start to dedicate our love to something more subtle, something more internal. Or else it's just like it's setting us up for one heartbreak after another. And as a father, that's a hard thing to do because I have to relinquish the idea of that my love for my children is I mean, I guess the love itself is eternal, but for the love for them in my possession. And I guess every father who's got teenage kids growing up or kids moving out of the house, they almost like they have relinquished that a little bit. Like there they go. They were here for a moment. They were little kids. We played together and they relinquished that. And there's almost like, and I think every parent relinquishes that type of, you go from like being that dominant God in their life to be sort of like, okay, you're sort of on
time
your own.
changes that, right?
Yeah. And
I guess parents, you hear so much. I mean, you're a parent, so you can tell me. But it's almost shocking how quick the whole thing happens.
it's almost shocking. You know, I'm at the age, some of my kids are at that age where if you don't see their friends for a while and then you see their friend, you're like, oh my God, what a growth spurt. The kid like grew a foot. He's got like a mustache. It's one of those things. They just go through that puberty phase where everyone's little, and all of a sudden everyone becomes sort of clumsy men in like a moment, awkward stage, you know? Yeah. And you remember, because these kids in our community, we knew when they were babies, when they were born practically. Yeah, but it's shocking.
But when let me ask you this too, as a parent. You obviously the parental affection is a very strong affection, right?
It's probably the strongest affection,
particularly intense strength to that affection. And you're mentioning, but that you had that time. You know, maybe some people don't come to terms with it, right? There's some mothers out there that just won't.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's some mothers who call their kids every day, like obsessed, and they're sort of like still trying to control them and trying to give them advice and stuff like that.
Yeah. But we see that as a little bit neurotic, and you know, most are going to some degree let go and accept what time is forcing. But as you accept that, and you're saying there comes with it, you're saying that, at least for you, that there comes with it that realization that they're not mine. But that affection is so strong. Do you as a Bhakti-yogi, do you see your relationship to your children and how that attachment gets a little bit, let's say, changed in a way, that a deep affection, it gets altered in a certain way, as they become less dependent on you and ultimately move on with their lives? Do you feel the affection that you have for them? Like I guess this is what I'm getting at. You're describing this feeling of having to let go, but you're not letting go of the affection. And do you see that letting go of that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like that centralized affection, that affection placed on this very limited number of people. Does that letting go of them help you expand that scope of affection? Like, does it make you feel like I need to learn to love everyone like I love, and not necessarily exactly like, but like I love them?
There's something deep about a blood tie. I don't know what it is. It's probably something material. Like they look like you, they talk like you, they act like you, you know, they dress like you sometimes.
I think especially they're dependent on you too, right? It's like
they're dependent on you. You've seen them through all their things. I think that is like probably the most deeply rooted attachment in the normal psyche of man and woman. what it does do for me, it sort of makes me understand everything the Bhagavatam teaches, that actually we come together momentarily and it's a moment. And if you have kids that are teenagers, you realize that was a moment. That was a moment.
Right.
They were here a moment ago. All you got to do is look at a photo album, and then they're gone. And it forces you to either be bitter or to learn a refined way of loving, a less clingy type of loving. It's loving without possession. It's without loving without attachment and control. And it's probably a pure way of loving.
You know, there's a writer. Have you heard of Phyllis McGinley?
I've heard of Phyllis Diller. Have you heard of Phyllis Diller?
I have heard. I do remember Phyllis Diller.
Most people have no idea who Phyllis Diller is. Even Mara probably doesn't know who Phyllis Diller is.
Mara, you don't know
Even
Phyllis Diller? Wow.
No, I don't know.
That's what happens when you're 55. Papa Tony's like, Phyllis Diller, yes.
She was a comedian, but I think like the main focus of her humor was her own lack of beauty or something like that.
I remember. Okay, sorry about that.
But in any case, she had this quote. She was a poet and a writer, and she said, "Time is the thief you cannot banish." Right? It's going to come and take things away, and there's never any stop banishing that thief. And then she writes, "These are my daughters, I suppose, but where in the world did the children vanish?" Right, so it's like that, you know. It's like, what happened? That was just a minute, and they were children a second ago. I guess these are my daughters, but why aren't they still children? You know.
Okay, my friend, it's time for some Shelter lyrics. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Listen to this one. Not one of our most popular songs, but one of my favorite sets of lyrics.
All right.
Ready?
What's the title?
The title is called "The Hands of Time."
The Hands of Time.
It's done on perfection. This is when we were all brahmacharis. Paramananda was in the band. Okay. All of our heroes, they were forced to go. Their wealth, strength, and glamour, they were made of, where is it now? Profit, position, prestige, and name. All that was valued, but was it a gain? It seems I best refrain from all that nonsense that won't remain, because it seems like a crime, the hands of time. All of the kings and things they thought they possessed, as time ticks by, they soon realized nothing could be kept. Even the beauty of the body, not to mention the strength of the strong. We were wrong, it's gone. So tell me, to whom did it belong? It seems like a crime, the hands of time. This world's a mirage that we embrace with our love and energy, collecting and protecting all that we see. But it's a sucker's bet. We get upset. It's filled with heartaches and regrets. The best investment I see is for something to hold on to permanently. Hands of Time. What do you think? That was a good song, but never hit it off. It was one of our popular ones.
Good stuff. So what is that permanent thing then?
That permanent thing is something more subtle. We have to go to something more subtle. In this tradition, we understand that subtlety has a form. And that's what Bhakti-yogi is, falling in love with that form of divinity. In other traditions, it could be just sort of like an internal peace, you know?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that internal peace would then mean coming in touch with the soul, which is eternal.
Yeah.
You know, there's the past time you were mentioning relative time. You know, how there's dog years and mosquito years and human years and Lord Brahma years. But in the 10th canto, we read about Muchukunda, right? This warrior who he travels to other realms in the universe where time is you know, of a different measure. And he succeeds in satisfying the devas with his service. But then when it's time to return home, he's informed, you know, it's all been washed away, right? Like all the people that you know, they're all gone. There's
like a Grimm's Brothers story like this too, isn't there? Or is that Rip Van Winkle?
Oh, maybe Rip Van Winkle. I don't know.
Maybe Rip Van Winkle.
Rip Van Winkle. That was up in your area, right? Like
yeah,
that whole thing.
Rip Van Winkle is from here. He fell asleep and then he woke up and everyone's dead. Okay, go on. What do you got? Tell me a story.
The Devas are telling him is the children, queens, relatives, ministers, advisors, and subjects who were your contemporaries are no longer alive. They've all been swept away by time. And then there's this
It's
quote.
like a Star Trek episode. Or
and then it says, inexhaustible time, stronger than the strong, is the supreme personality of Godhead himself. Like a herdsman moving his animals along, he moves mortal creatures as his pastime. Now, of course, we hear that again in Bhagavad Gita, right? Time I am, right? So I find this really important too. It's like we see time. In other words, time is unnatural to us. The fact that we're living in a world where everything is shifting and changing and ultimately being destroyed is unnatural and is the cause of suffering. Okay, we get that. So then, even as you mentioned in your song, we want to embrace something that's eternal. And so we think, okay, well, there's God, right? There's the spiritual realm. There's the nature of the soul. This is where my consciousness and my affection and my, has to move in that direction. If I'm going to ever become free of suffering. But even in that, like even in our undeveloped stage, right? Even when we haven't fully realized these things, we can still look at time, not merely as an ending, but say that's God's energy. That is God, right? That is God. And as Prabhupada mentioned in his commentary, there to teach the lesson, there to educate us, there to help us understand. And if we can come to that state, that's like, to me, that's like a mature kind of spirituality, right? Where even as we go through the suffering that time inevitably causes, that we feel, even in the midst of that pinch, we feel the blessings of that affectionate, loving God, right?
It's a tall order, but that's sort of like that's it.
Yeah. And but it comes with Bhagavatam, and I think it comes. I think even as I think you're even displaying it, like as you're talking about like your relationship, say to your children as they're growing up, you're forced to accept it, but it's almost like in your voice, I hear almost a sense of gratitude that I'm waking up. I'm waking up to reality.
Sure. And because of the Bhagavatam, truthfully, the aging process becomes much more sweeter.
Yeah.
It just happens. Nancy just nodded her head. She was like, yes.
Yeah.
It just does. Otherwise, what does it come? It just becomes more bitter. Like, I can't enjoy like I used to. Everybody is leaving me. I'm looking uglier and older, or you know what I mean? Everything's bitterness.
Yeah.
But when you understand it in terms, you're saying, oh, it's like the coconut.
In that bitter.
You can't get that coconut. If you ever try to open a coconut, get the meat out of the coconut, the hard coconuts. You put it in the oven and it sorts. You put it in a low heat in the oven, and the coconut meat starts to get smaller, and it removes itself.
Have you ever really
the
done
shell.
this, Raghunath?
We did this, right?
I never did. I'm asking, have you?
Oh, have I ever done this? I thought you said we already did this analogy. Yes, I have done it.
No, you did the
times.
analogy, but I'm saying, have you actually done it in real life?
I've actually done it. It works.
Okay. Just
remove the coconut meat. Mary, right? Yeah. You're a cook. You cooking coconuts there in Puerto Rico?
No, I'm not. I haven't done it, but
okay.
I trust you.
Yeah, it works. Otherwise, you could slice up your hand trying to get that meat out. And so this is what's going on. It's like my sense of I-ness is merged with my ego and my body and my stuff. It's merged like the coconut meat with the shell. And I'm like slicing my finger to try to remove it. My ego, my stuff. I got a flat tire. I wrecked my car, or my kid is sick and I'm incredibly worried. And slowly what's happening is that shell is, it's getting smaller and removing it. The Bhagavatam is that oven that's sort of like detaching ourselves from our ego, detaching ourselves from it, not in an inappropriate way. Like, okay, kids, you're free, play in the traffic, not in a way like that. But I understand there's no possession of these kids. They're mine to care for and love, but ultimately they're not mine. And the same with our stuff, the same with our body, our face, our hair, our, all the things that we can, our careers, all these things that we sort of extend to be me. They're not me. And it happens in a very sweet way. It's not like a windstorm that comes through and snaps all the trees. It's sort of like that birch tree that sort of bends with the ice. You like the birch tree? You like that? Came
It's
up
all
with
right.
that
It's
one.
all right. Sometimes there's a snap though too, right?
Sometimes they snap. Everything's got a snapping point.
Okay, we got a chapter to finish here then.
Okay, we're good. We're good.
A
All right. What
canto to
number was that,
finish here.
sir?
We're
We got a
finishing
canto.
a
Let's
canto.
finish this up. We got an end of the year. Time's ticking away. We're all about to die. Let's do this. Okay. What tax are we on?
We're on. I think we're on. Was it 44?
44.
44.
44. Thank you. The great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence beyond these features. There is no direct engineering by the Lord for the creation and destruction of the material world. What is described in the Vedas about his direct interface is simply to counteract the idea that the material nature is the creator. So this process, go on.
Yes. So in other words, what these verses are saying is that, in this verse, it's saying that the Vedas may describe like Krishna as being the creator, but he's actually, it's all kind of deputed to others. But language like that may be used so that you don't think, and this is how it's translated here, that it's to counteract the idea that material nature is the creator. In other words, there's always someone behind it, and so that we don't lose touch with that. Sometimes the language in the Vedic literature is simplified. But also here it's being said that we've just heard about the creation and the destruction of the material realm, but the real bhakti yogis, they want to know about that feature of God that's beyond the creation and destruction of the material realm. There's a person to know, and an existence to know that's beyond that, and inquiring minds want to know about that. Right.
I know the reference. Many people don't know that reference, Kaustubha, but I know it.
I know you know it.
This process of creation, 46?
Yes.
This process of creation and annihilation described in summary herein is the regulative principle during the duration of Brahma's one day. It is also the regulative principle in the creation of the Mahat, in which the material nature is dispersed. The Mahat means like everything, right?
Well, here, because again, there's
Creation
two
of
creations.
Mahat.
There's Sarga and Visarga. There's the original creation, that's the creation of Mahavishnu, and then through him come unlimited universes, and then there's the creation within that universe.
That's the Mahat.
No, the Mahat is the bigger one, right? So the process of creation and annihilation described herein, which was the universal creation, Brahma's creation, that takes place in Brahma's one day. But also beyond that, way beyond Brahma, of much larger realm, is Mahavishnu's creation, and the same principle is there of creation, maintenance, and ultimately destruction.
And there's also a concept of time of 100 years, isn't there?
In the Mahat?
Vishnu. Yeah. Well, with Vishnu, is his breath. There's his breathing creates the universes.
Yeah, but I guess but Vishnu doesn't disappear or anything like Brahma will disappear into the body of Vishnu, and then that
And
soul
then
will take on
remanifest.
another body, whereas that Mahavishnu is always there.
Okay, 46. The process of creation and annihilation is described
No,
in
you
some.
just read this. 47.
O king, I shall endue. Thank God you're here. I'd just be reading the same verse all day.
We'd be reading backwards. We'd be at the beginning of
Wait a
Bhagavatam.
second. I'm on Canto 1. O king, I shall in due course explain the measurement of time in its gross and subtle features with the specific symptoms of each. But for the present, let me explain unto you the Padma Kalpa.
Yeah, Padma Kalpa means like that first Padma here is referring to Lord Brahma, is
Sitting
born
on the
on
lotus?
the lotus from Lord Vishnu. So that's the first kalpa, the first time measurement is called the Padma Kalpa.
Gotcha.
And we're going to begin to hear about that in the third canto, which we're about to start.
Okay. Shaunaka Rishi, after hearing all about the creation inquired from Sutta Goswami about Vidura. For Sutta Goswami had previously informed him how Vidura left home, leaving aside all of his relatives who were very difficult to leave. Anybody have any relatives that are very difficult to leave? I'm just kidding.
Some are easier, some are more difficult.
Everyone's like, yeah. Shaunak Rishi said, let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidura and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidura and replied by Maitreya. Also, please let us know the reason for Vidura's giving up the connection of his family members and why he again came home. It's like has to do with a lot of these questions and answers day, you know. Please also let us know the activities of Vidura while he was in places of pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So Vidura, by the way, is, you know, he's one of the saintly characters of the Mahabharata. Always, he's like a minister. He's always giving advice to the king, the blind king. The blind king's never listening to any of his advice, but he's one of these people that you fall in love with in the Mahabharata.
It is, and also in Bhagavatam now, because now you see these questions right here, they're going to open up the door to the third canto, and the third and fourth cantos consist, like, in other words, we talk first, second, third level, right? Bhagavatam begins on first level, which is Raghu. First level.
Shaunak Rishi and the sages of Namasharanya.
That's right. That
Sutta Goswami.
Well, yeah, the sages headed by Shaunaka are asking questions to Sutta Goswami. And to answer their questions, Sutta Goswami is referring to what he witnessed. This is level number 2, when he saw Maharaj Parikshit questioning Sukadeva Goswami.
So there's like a story within a story, like, oh, that reminds me of my grandfather. You know what I mean? And then their grandfather's talking. Oh, that
right.
And then the grandfather talks about
so
another
within that
person.
story,
we're going stories within stories.
Yeah. So when
and there is a lot of crossroads, like the Mahabharata enters into the Bhagavatam, the Ramayana enters into the Bhagavatam.
Sure.
These pastimes of other avatars. So I will say it's sort of like a hub, a major train station where different trains are coming in, different Puranas are coming into the Mahabharata, but really it's selecting the highest elements of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the Bhagavad Purana is the purest of the Puranas, dealing with bhakti and the avatars and sweet Krishna. So it's the hub, but it's the juiciest, the sweetest of all hubs, of all train stations.
That's right. And so when we get to the third canto, we're going to go to level 3, which means that the sages are asking Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami is referring to Maharaj Parikshit speaking to Sukadeva Goswami. And then Sukadeva Goswami is going to be like, well, let me tell you a story about when Vidura was asking questions to Maitreya. And so and then within those is going to go to level 4 and sometimes level 5, you know. But the third and fourth canto are especially, you know, Vidura's questions to Maitreya. They especially consist of that. And so we'll be immediately entering there on the 1st of January as we begin the third canto. But there's some nice...
great way to start a new year with Vidura.
It is. And there's you know, I remember when my wife were reading Bhagavatam together, you know, we were reading like every day together. And we read through the third canto, we read through the fourth canto. And when we got to the end of the fourth canto, we're like, that's it for Vidura. It's like, you know, he's gone. It was actually like painful that, you know, he was kind of like, we wouldn't be hearing so much from him anymore.
You know, Vidura, he was, all of his love that he gave to the king and all of his like dedication that he gave to the kingdom and all of the disrespect he got, and finally to the point where Duryodhana convinced his father, like, just get rid of him, like basically kicking him out of his home and his palace. He had every right, and I think it's safe to say we've all been wronged.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with infallible humans. Humans are broken. It's like if you're going into a hospital, you can't ask the question, why are these people all sick? That's part of being in the hospital. You know, you're going to deal with sick people. In the material world, people are broken. People do stupid things. If you haven't been hurt yet, you haven't been alive. So, and a lot of us have a really good story, and we have a really good case against people who have hurt us. And this is where forgiveness comes into play. And Vidura did it so expertly because when he had every good reason to be angry at Duryodhana, his nephew, and Dhritarashtra, his brother, instead he saw this as how God was using people for him to go higher. He wasn't blaming them. He was seeing God is using people and situations for my purification. Like, what an incredible vision. God is using people and situations. It's not even them. It's got nothing to do with them. He sees the hand in God of people that are being incredibly cruel to him. And he said, you know what? I'm going to make the best out of this. And I'm just going to go on pilgrimage. And that's what he did. He got kicked out of the palace. He had every reason to be resentful. And he said, this is God wanting me to go on pilgrimage. And sure enough, in that pilgrimage, he meets Maitreya. Yeah. And they have this very, very deep conversation. It's so deep that we're talking about it about 5,000 or 6,000 years later.
Yeah, he'll meet Uddhava first. Great stuff there. And then he'll meet Maitreya and really place most of his questions before Maitreya. And you know what you're saying about Vidura is so great too, because not only does he walk away without feeling a sense of bitterness or resentment, but he goes out there and he meets great sages and he becomes still deeper in his own spiritual realization. And then what does he do? He turns around and he goes back, right? And he helps his brother who he had every right to resent.
Yeah, okay, I'm spiritual now. Screw you! You kicked me out of your kingdom. Screw you! Instead, he's like, I'm going to go right back to this person, and I'm just going to give this person real love. And that was the tough love he gave, which is, listen, you're getting old, I'm getting old. You're living with these people who you've been hated. You hated the Pandavas. You tried to kill the Pandavas, and you're living on their mercy like a household dog. Yeah. Like a household dog. Yeah. And he says, now is the time to get serious about your spiritual life. You've done it all externally. Now it's time to go very deep. This is when we get serious. And he basically helped his brother.
His brother went off and became a yogi.
Become a great yogi. It's actually very beautiful. What a lesson in the life of Vidura. Oh, Kaustubha.
Love Vidura.
Aren't we?
Hey, we got one more verse to read, but it's the canto.
Oh, wait, hold it. Wait. Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively. That's it. It's the canto.
So tomorrow we'll do a recap of the first and second cantos and talk a little bit about what's coming in the coming year for Wisdom of the Sages, right?
Very exciting. It's tomorrow the 31st or the 30th?
31st.
It's the 31st.
That's what I'm telling you.
This is it. This is the end of the year. This is the end of 2020.
That's right.
What? Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Oh, hey, the Wisdom of the Sages retreat is happening, but without the other sages. Mayor and Kaustubha cannot go for personal reasons, but I'm still going. And we're going to Colombia. So if you're interested, we're going. I'm trying to drag Parmananda down there with me, too. If you're interested, go to my website, raghunath.yoga. And it's on. Hey, I am taking a pilgrimage to Nepal, half trekking, whitewater rafting, and holy places of Nepal, which was an Indian kingdom, because India is still not opening up, and Nepal has been open since October. So that is April 8th, right after Easter, right after Passover. If you like the Himalayas and hiking through the Himalayas and ancient temples, and I'm super excited for this. If you're interested, check it. It's on my website, right? I just put it up yesterday. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm teaching at 6:30. Bob's teaching the gentle class. I'm teaching the kick your ass class. So depending on your mood, at 6:30 at supersoulyoga.com. You can sign up there. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. What a 2020 it's been.
Yeah.